There's another way of sharpening sometimes people use, and it's the high pass filter. You guys ever played around with the high pass? Let's talk about that for a second. The high pass filter works by isolating the frequencies in an image and letting the high frequencies pass. So if I went under filter, other, high pass, most of the image turns what color? What is this shade here? It's not just gray, it's a special kind of gray. It's 50% gray. Remember when we were looking at non-destructive dodging and burning? We said if you made a new transparent layer and you painted black, well, you'd see black, but if you converted it to soft light or overlay, one of those blending modes, anything darker than 50% gray would darken the pixels, anything lighter would lighten the pixels, but 50% gray itself would do absolutely nothing. And sharpening works by finding edges and adding contrast. And if we zoom in here, we've basically found the edges in this image, haven't we? We have a light side of the edge, we have a dark side of the edge, and if I were to change this blending mode to say, let's do overlay for a little bit more of a kick there. There's before, and there's after. It looks an awful lot like sharpening, doesn't it? Which makes sense if you figure the light side is lightening, because it's lighter than 50% gray, the dark side is darkening, so that's kind of a way of sharpening an image without actually using a sharpen filter. And some people like using this high pass. And there's another cool feature about this. You'll notice that the chromatic aberration did get exaggerated. The red is a little bit stronger, the cyan is a little bit stronger. Here's the LAB version. Here's the, actually I'm going to change the blending mode to hard light. That's a little bit more intense there. There we go. Why is it exaggerating the saturation? Well, let's take a look at the layer itself. This is the high pass layer, and you can see there's still the color information in there. The high pass filter works by looking at the image and saying, okay, any details that are below a certain threshold. So in this case, I ran it with a radius of 2.2 pixels. So anything that's 2.2 pixels or smaller remains. So the pores, the hairs, the very fine lines, they remain. Everything else becomes that very generic 50% gray color that does absolutely nothing in that hard light blending mode. But those fine details remain. But the color is there. How can I get rid of that color? I could use a hue and saturation and pull the saturation all the way down, or I could simply use the desaturate option. Take a look what happens. The color's gone. So it's still getting that sharpening effect, but it's not exaggerating that chromatic aberration, that color fringing around there. Interesting. So that's kind of another way you can do sharpening.